Welcome to Dependable Flame, where we explore vintage petrol lighters, ashtrays, tobacconiana, and other useful mechanisms. Make yourself at home.
Today we are going to unpackage this rather sizable box of old petrol lighters that we recently purchased from a secondary auction site. There were 3 different lots that are all here in the same box. The first 2 were bought together and they appear to be packaged very well. These are both Right Point advertising lighters, which I've never owned one of these before, so we'll get to fuel them up and just see whether they're any better at holding fuel after all these years of gaskets possibly degrading like the ScriptoView lighters do. First one is a table lighter, second one a pocket model, both I believe with the same advertising motif. Gonna need to get our scissors out here to get this pocket model loose. As I said, I don't have any experience with these Right Points. I've messed with plenty of View lighters, and I'm not the biggest fan. They tend to leak. I'd say from my experience, probably 25% of them function fine without replacing seals or gaskets. And there are people that replace those. There are videos on YouTube. There's a guy in one of the Facebook groups that specializes in it. So that'll be a fun little project there with those 2. Now each of these other 2 lots are going to be significantly more lighters in them. I believe one lot had 17 and the other one had 25. It appears as though they have been packaged here sort of in brick format, which is not the worst way that you can package a big lot of lighters, but it's also not the best way that you can do that to protect them to the maximum degree either. I personally would not have packaged a couple of big lots like this to ship without individually wrapping the lighters. These lighters are separated on each layer by a length of bubble wrap, but on the sides they're just allowed to bump up against each other, which to me, there's just too much possibility of damage occurring. Even if it's not extreme damage, gouging, denting, just the wear from rubbing against each other. It's sort of like a vintage or antique dealer having some old Zippo boxes that they affix price stickers to the paper box on. It just runs too much of a risk of either leaving residue of the adhesive behind or peeling off paper. I'd say it's a similar thing with the way these are packaged. You could have some residual damage just by the way that they were rubbing up against each other in transit. So the first aluminum block lighter here of the group has a wood handle. That's something I'd never encountered before. Look forward to getting into that one. We'll cut the sides off of here so we can kind of unwrap this, unfold it as we go along with each layer. And as you can see, they all appear to be aluminum block lighters. There are 5 of them there that are cylindrical in shape. I believe one of those is an Automet, which I have owned before. This is a cool little 6-sided, or I guess actually 8-sided, or hexagonal in shape. Has an inscription there engraved onto it that says Germany and then either 1943 or 1942. The snuffer or lid screws in and appears to be some sort of plastic. I don't know if that's your typical everyday plastic or if it might be period correct, maybe some form of Catalin or Bakelite. Really cool lighter. Kind of has a built-up windscreen there that you can see through to the cap. Really nifty, small lighter. I look forward to firing that one up and getting into it for sure. From my experience, I think that most of those kinds of lighters that have those kinds of inscriptions that would lead you to believe they might have been involved in a war were probably engraved at a later date. There was a sort of high polish rectangular. Here we have a couple of the cylindrical or round models. I've had one of these. Well, I've actually had a couple. I think I had an Automet a few years ago, and way back at the very beginning I had a flip top cylindrical aluminum block lighter that I used to keep right beside me. It wasn't ribbed like this one. I think that's the Automet. And I also don't think it was shiny and high polish like this one. It was more of a dull, wasn't anything too special about it. And I just used it as one of my, I guess you'd call it a daily user. It sat right there beside me on the coffee table in the old house that I used to live in. This one is also appears to be unmarked, but does have a painted, I believe, advertising graphic or logo. That's an H with a red background. See what we can do about identifying that. Another little rectangular advertising model with a silver and black tone disc. Got small file roller and a couple of fill screws, it looks like, but they're too tight for me to loosen them up right now as we're making this video. This cylindrical lighter has a whole different tone from the others, a little bit darker, and it's not a flip top. It looks like it screws on. That's the bottom, and so I'm going to assume that the snuffer screws on as well. So not necessarily a one-handed lighter, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be valuable to somebody just the same. Here we'll go ahead and kind of unfold this layer by layer. I see another advertising model there, which I don't believe that that one is marked, simply because I have an identical aluminum block lighter that is also unmarked that has the same advertising logo. I'm trying to remember now. I know there was a P. Is it PG? I don't think it was Procter & Gamble. I think it was some other outfit, but anyway, it does not appear to be marked. The other one that I already had, I did not have a flint spring or screw for. So we'll see about identifying that advertisement, getting the lighter up and running, and then also comparing it with the one I already had. Perhaps getting the flint spring and screw replaced. This little lighter has a different tone, a darker tone from most of the others. It's kind of rounded on the corners. Pretty neat. This is a kind of square body lighter with some kind of random engine turning on the back side of it. Now this is made by the Firefly Company, which I believe was in Buffalo, New York. And I think this is the Flick, but I couldn't read those fuel screws. That's the sort of semi-automatic mechanism, kind of like the Dunhill service lighters. Also some of the MCOs. There are a lot of these that the fill screws are going to require a screwdriver to open them. They were just too tight. And there were several that were marked, but that I couldn't necessarily read through the viewfinder of the camera. That one was a lighter called the Jackson. I've been familiar with it for a long time, but never owned an example of it. I'm not sure why there are 2 fuel screws on the bottom of some of these, but I like it. Anything unusual, I'm always here for it. Now, there were 5 lighters in this group that were advertised as incomplete, not fully assembled. And it looks like at the very least they're all missing fuel screws, some of them missing wadding, the inner expendable parts of the lighters, and also some pretty serious corrosion on at least a couple of them. So those were pretty much bought just for parts. I don't really know what I'm going to do with those. I didn't count those. I figured there were 39 lighters in here that would be sellable to me. There's another one that is marked. They're not all marked. And it is very difficult to read some of them that are. Of course, we're going to have individual videos for all of these lighters. This design was rather unique to me. I had not encountered one before. I really like that snuffer cap, how it flips up. And we'll just see. I couldn't see the flint spring screw there, so hopefully there's a screw in there. If not, we'll have to see about coming up with one. Yeah, maybe there is a screwdriver slot that you can see up in there. Now this particular lighter looks like those that were incomplete. Looks like the same design, although it is complete. Does have a fuel screw. I'm assuming it's got the wick and wadding and everything that it would need. So we'll just see about that. Like I said, I don't really know what I would do with those 5 that are incomplete. It's possible maybe we could come up with fuel screw for some of them. Maybe sell them as parts for other lighters. Now this particular group here was a little bit smaller than the other one. And while I paid less for it than I did for that first big group, the second group that we looked at here, there was one particular lighter in this lot that when I saw it, I determined I was going to buy it. And I can't remember the exact amount. I think I ended up paying about $130 for this lot. But I was willing to pay close to twice that in order to obtain the one lighter that I can add to my personal collection. And to be honest, I have encountered one of these lighters in the past, maybe in an eBay listing, maybe in a listing on one of the other secondary sites. I can't really recall. I know that I had seen at least one before in pictures, in a listing, never in person. And you know, I can't remember the exact total. I think it's somewhere in the high teens or low 20s now of a lighter that makes up the majority of my personal collection. And you can see here it is in a green and black box. Go ahead and get the rest of this stuff positioned here to where we can get them pulled out and see them all individually. This lighter reminds me of an old German lighter that I had one time that was on 4 wheels. And it has a brand mark there, but I couldn't make it out. And I thought maybe that screwed on, but that actually just sits there. Kind of fits on top of it. Nothing wrong with that. Really look forward to getting into that lighter as well. Getting back here to this lighter in the green box, green lid, black bottom portion. And as you can see, it is a gold tone pipe lighter. Now the box to me doesn't appear to have any markings as far as the brand of the lighter. The insert in the bottom of the box there does appear to be the proper insert for this particular pipe lighter. It's just been worn over time. But you can see right there on the bottom It is marked Cygnus, Japan. So while there's still some work to be done on it, you can see the unique Cygnus flint tension thumb roller mechanism there. And this will be the newest addition to our personal collection of vintage Penguin Cygnus petrol lighters. And really nifty that this one is a pipe lighter. And its appearance reminds me very much of the Rogers pipe lighter that was made in England. Also, I believe, an aluminum block lighter. This one may be a little bit thinner. Maybe not, though. Like I said, the lighter fits into the insert. It just appears that that cardboard insert has suffered some wear over time. Now this sort of square, squat aluminum block lighter has an old quarter embedded in it. Looks like it's dated 1943. If that's the case, that would be a mostly silver coin. I'm not sure what this is. There's a metal rod there on one side and a wick, but I don't see any way of striking it. There's no rasp, there's no file wheel. So I don't know if this is just some sort of candle, maybe, that you light off of another item. But it does appear to be made out of aluminum, like the majority of the lighters in these latter two groups. It's a really nifty lighter here now, and it feels a little heavier than most of the other lighters of its size. So it's possible that this is a gold tone anodized aluminum, but it's also possible that this is a solid block lighter that was made out of some other kind of material that, at least in the hand, appears to be heavier than these other obviously aluminum lighters. Now, I sort of was fumbling around in the dark on this one for a minute before I figured it out, that this is a semi-automatic aluminum block lighter. And you can see I accidentally actuated it to discover how it works, but appears to be, it feels like a very strong mechanism, and I can't recall ever owning a semi-automatic aluminum block lighter, so definitely glad to come into possession of that one. Here is a Signal lighter, which is aluminum construction, and I don't know if it was patterned after the Dunhill service lighter, but it works in the same way. Here's another rectangular shape with some machine work done on the sides to embellish it. I don't know exactly. It looked a little bit sloppy with some of those ribs that were machined into the side of it. Here is an aluminum wheel lighter. Have to look that one over a little closer to see if there are any markings on it. This lighter has a little bit different tone to it and also feels a little bit heavier. So I'm not certain that this lighter is aluminum either. But either way, it should fire up. We'll get it cleaned up, fueled up, and we'll just see how each of these individual lighters work. So we already ran across one complete example that appeared to be the same manufacturer as those 5 that were incomplete. So that brings us to a total of 7 thus far. This is an old lighter that is very familiar to me. I think I've owned 3 or 4 of them at this point. This is a Josephson & Sharp Sharpo, one of the more intricately made aluminum block petrol lighters, and nice uniform ribs all the way around except the top and the bottom. A nice fluted file wheel that tapers at the bottom. And the one thing that I appreciate most about the Sharpo is that the fuel screw is so marked in detail, because so many of these aluminum block lighters have no markings whatsoever. That one is rounded off at the bottom and somewhat on the top. Looks very similar to the 5 incomplete along with the other 2 that we've already looked at there. Could be the same manufacturer. This one is a Nordad, another one with 2 fuel screws on the bottom, and I'm not sure what that screw on the front was for. It is also engraved. I think it said Ray to Pearl. I nearly bought one of these in an individual auction from one of my favorite eBay sellers, Lightersaurus, recently, and I lost out. So very glad to come into possession of this one, and I was going to try to loosen that up with my thumb, but it only loosened up somewhat. So we'll have to get a screwdriver on there just to see, get that functioning the way we want it. And this lighter appears to be identical to the one that I said had some sloppy machine work done on it. And now that I look at it, I'm not sure that that's sloppy machine work so much as maybe a missized blank. Looks like it's sawed off on the backside. Some of those ribs that are machined into it are uneven. But as I mentioned before, you're going to get much more detailed looks into each of these lighters individually over the course of the next days, weeks, and months, depending on how many other lighters we acquire, what kind of videos we're making, what my babysitting schedule happens to be. So nice to acquire those 2 lighters. Very happy to have them. Here is another Sharpo. That one looks like it did have maybe an advertising embellishment on it. There's a blank circular slot there right in the middle. And then we're going to end the whole group here with another one that looks identical to those 5 that are so corroded that were incomplete. So it looks like we've got 3 of those that are functional, and to go along with the 5 that were incomplete, lacking fuel screws, lacking the expendable materials from inside. But this is the gem of the bunch right here. This one goes into my personal collection. Until next time.